Yeah, it's great to be here. Great to have you here joining us. You're from Silicon Valley, and you're going to bring that Silicon Valley perspective, that entrepreneurial, innovation, devil-may-care type of right. perspective to things. It's great to be here, and as Kim mentioned, I've been trying to preach the EA message for years now. Some of you may have seen my column on ZDNet, initially focusing on something called service-oriented architecture, SOA. Anybody remember SOA? Yeah, great stuff, right? And my belief is SOA is now part of the business. It's part of the architecture. It's embedded in everything we do. You know, some people out there say SOA kind of failed on some level, and I think where things may have gone wrong is it was difficult to sell the concept of SOA to the business, the benefits of SOA. It kind of stayed in the IT world, and that's why we need enterprise architects. We need enterprise architects to be able to take this technology, to sell this technology to the business world, to be the bridge, to translate what the business needs into IT implementations. And I'm happy to be here with David to talk about the ways we can move business forward. To move technology, take technology, and make business happen as a result. And I'm going to throw some questions at David to get things started. David's going to talk a bit about Lean, the concept of Lean. We have LeanIX or LeanIX. What's the company? Lean. I like LeanIX. It sounds like Linux, right? But we're going to talk about the concept of Lean and why it's such all the rage in Silicon Valley. And David, why don't you start us off? Talk about what's going on out there.
So my indoctrination into Lean, a little bit of a buzzword, was a trial by fire. I was fortunate enough earlier on in my career to have a safe environment to learn EA. I had mentors from Cisco and HP, the United States Air Force, very structured environments, and it was a great place to kind of crawl, walk, run, right? So from crawling to walking, kind of got my footing in enterprise architecture, and unfortunately we never really got to run, right? Projects took 2 years, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of traditional aspects to EA. EA was kind of viewed like a bureaucratic body, right? If you want to do something, you have to go to this ARB, Architecture Review Board. You know, it was almost like a trip to the DMV, right? You have to show why you as a business leader has to do something, yet this EA team, it doesn't really have skin in the game with business results. It kind of just looked like a bump in the road. And so I transitioned away from the very large multi-billion-dollar corporations where I learned EA and wanted to get kind of in the thick of it and wanted to get in the weeds at a startup, right? So I went to an engineering company, and they never even heard of EA, right? And kind of bringing over some of that legacy baggage of, hey, EA is all about documenting everything, and EA is all about creating policies and standards that you have to adhere to. It was almost like an allergic reaction, right? Like, just get out of here, that nonsense. This is not how we run in the valley. You need to show us how this is a value-add activity, or if it's not a value-add activity, it's waste, right? Hence the kind of Lean mindset. So really to kind of tie it back to Lean, there's the Lean startup. Lean came from manufacturing. We're borrowing the same kind of paradigm in that anything we do, we should be able to draw a line to business value, right? So when we think about modeling the universe, like as EAs love to do, we like to think about business capabilities and then apps and then servers and down to the hard drives. It's just like, okay, that's wonderful, but how is that shipping product, right? How's that ramping up employee time, right? We need to be a little bit more crisp in our value proposition. So I think Lean is a little bit of a buzzword, but what we're really trying to do is rebrand EA, right? And be more of like a business partner as opposed to this kind of odd ivory tower off to the side.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I think of Lean, going back to manufacturing days, and there's a lot of talk about Lean IT these days, you think of better, faster, cheaper, higher quality. And above all that, you think of empowerment. You think of empowering the people that work with you to have that decision-making authority, to be able to participate in what's going on in the production of the software or the product or whatever the case may be. How does that relate to what EAs need to do?
Right. So we saw communities earlier, architecture communities. One thing that I observe constantly at any company I go to, everyone's in meetings all day, right? Everyone's developing PowerPoints for the executives all day long. And I say that's not a value-add activity. Shipping product is. And so one thing that EA really helps do is figure out, it's almost like just-in-time production of a solution. So when do we pop in people at what point in time? And that becomes like a routine. It becomes like the Ford Motor Company, assembly line of project deployment, right? As opposed to lots of ambiguity, lots of confusion, everybody being sucked into every meeting, not knowing like the right roles and responsibilities. So I think that's kind of one way we execute on Lean on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. So what's different these days that really makes Lean and the ability, the need for EAs to get involved in this side of this methodology or this philosophy?
Yeah.
What's different in the economy or in the business world or in the IT world?
Right, competition for sure. So in the manufacturing world, there were high barriers to entry. It cost millions of dollars to build a factory, right? Today, a developer with a credit card can create an MVP of minimum viable product of a solution. And so I think EA's role is to kind of step into that scenario and say, okay, we want to move fast, we want to scale, but we have to, and to borrow one of my customers' terms, we don't want to build Boston, right? And I said, wait, I love the town of Boston. What do you have against Boston? He said, well, it's an organically grown city, right? On one side, you might have a cobblestone street, then you have like the super freeway, right? Then you have the subway, and it's all kind of like layered on top of each other. When Boston was founded, they didn't think about what it was going to look like in 200 years, where EA, we kind of do look, 18, 24 months down the pike, and we can really avoid some of the major growth pains that these companies endure without thinking about the future. Instead of a myopic quarter-to-quarter focus, we can kind of come in and say, okay, we need to focus on what we're going to deliver this quarter, but with a broader strategy in mind. Mm-hmm. Right?
And as everyone knows, companies are moving a lot faster these days. It used to be you could plan things out 5 years in advance. If you're an EA back in the 1990s, you're looking 5 years down the road and planning out accordingly. Mm-hmm. But now there's talk about failing fast and moving fast, right. And it's not even quarterly. You're talking about doing new releases of software every day, and the business changes almost every day.
Right.
Are things moving too fast to?
Yeah.
I
think they can move too fast, right? So I parachuted into a firm not too long ago, and the CIOs, we joke in Silicon Valley have a shelf life of about 2 years, right? So the CIO was at about 18 months in, and we did a capability assessment of their landscape. The pretty diagram. Here's your red hot spots. Here's where you're doing well. And we focused more on CRM, but for the sake of that exercise, IT service management was red, right? And they thought, oh, we'll just re-implement ServiceNow. They had ServiceNow, for example. I said, okay, let's kind of think about this. You have some other priorities. And they said, no. Like, we have an affinity towards action here. Like, we're not planners. We're not going to, don't give me that PowerPoint nonsense. Like, let's just do stuff. And I said, okay, well, it's expensive to re-implement the solution. And they did it anyway. They went kind of heavy on the ITIL processes, right? So they went from kind of a not-so-great ServiceNow implementation to a very heavy ServiceNow implementation. This is like a mid-sized company. I said, okay. And then 24 months, that CIO shelf life expired. He was out. New CIO in and said, okay, this is a terrible solution. We're 86 in this. We're going to go with Jira, right? I said, okay. Let's think about this, right? So no thinking, just execution, got Jira. And, again, he lasted maybe like 12, 13 months. And then the new CIO came on board and said, where's my service now? So you can move too fast, right? So I think EA's job is to kind of throttle, that acceleration a little bit and, kind of bring some sense to the party without slowing things down from a business delivery standpoint.
Now, David, as I mentioned earlier, you're from Silicon Valley. Your roots are there. I just saw a quote, Steve Jobs is quoted a lot. I just saw a quote from him, which I wasn't familiar with the other day. He stated that at Apple, at least at the time he was there were no committees. It was run as almost as a startup, as a Silicon Valley style startup. How as a company, are the companies you see in Silicon Valley, do they operate on a different plane than mainstream businesses you see here in Manhattan? And
absolutely. Some of the companies I've seen in like Texas and Manhattan, traditional manufacturing, cosmetics companies, kind of the gamut. In Silicon Valley, oftentimes they're on a growth trajectory. So while the companies maybe out here or more mature companies are thinking about fiscal responsibility, kind of optimizing finances, right, profit margins, things like that, it's almost like money doesn't matter sometimes in the Bay Area. It really doesn't if you have a giant mountain of funding and your investors are saying grow, right? We don't care about profitability. We care about monthly active users, right? It's a whole other mindset, right? So when you come in with an EA mindset of like, let's be efficient and let's save money, they're like, get out of here, right? How are we going to push more product faster, right? So yeah, I do think that like the Silicon Valley startup and the hyper growth companies you really have to kind of turn the equation on its head a little bit and refocus to that growth need.
So it sounds like the EAs may hit some resistance. I mean, it seems every company out there wants to emulate Silicon Valley. They want to act like a startup, or else they're starting up a kind of an independent skunkworks type of unit that will act like a startup and infuse some kind of new culture into the business. It sounds like a headwind for EAs who want to say, wait a minute, let's think about what we're doing here.
Right.
And,
so the analogy I use with my EA colleagues is you always have to kind of deliver EA under the guise of what the business wants. It's the what's in it for me kind of paradigm. If you come to the table with that greater good approach, forget it, right? It's not, the greater good is, not me, right? Even though I'm a part of the greater good. The CIO may care about the greater good, but he or she is few and far between. When you have conversations with business managers, when you're talking to a VP of sales, or you're talking to the CFO, it's like they have immediate needs with SOX or GDPR compliance. They, have a new lead gen strategy that needs to be executed. And so really to kind of make sure that the company grows quickly, but not too quickly, I think what you need to do is bake in those best practices, almost like behind the scenes, right? It's like feeding a finicky child, veggies like hidden in the mashed potatoes, right? They want the mashed potatoes, but you got to give them, what they need in a delivery mechanism they want. So that's kind of, it's not meant to be deceptive, but it's a little bit of the trickery that we use to kind of bake in best practice without inundating people with best practice, right?
As long as you don't try to sneak peas into those mashed potatoes, I'll be fine with that. But so everybody wants to be a fast-moving company, and you've provided us a good way to go in and kind of embed EA thinking. Is this happening now? Do you see this happening in mainstream companies?
Yeah, I mean, in the past 8 years, I've implemented 5 EA practices. They're all alive and well. They're growing. We all want growth faster and better, but the EA programs that have taken root and grown are the ones that are really, really focused on tying EA activities to current year initiatives, right? Not having like a application portfolio as a product, but instead having a CRM consolidation project as the business-facing sort of delivery mechanism behind the scene. We think about how do we rationalize the portfolio? How do we go from 6 CRMs to 2 or 1, right? Again, kind of making it resonate with business people.
And Dave, you've written some great blogs. In preparation for today's session, I went back centermast.com and read a lot of your pieces. And you have an interesting piece that you just posted within the past month about the challenges EAs face for the future. One of them is being perhaps even the name enterprise architecture is difficult for businesses to digest.
Right.
Maybe you could go over some of the issues you're seeing with promoting EA or getting EA on track with the rest of the business.
A real world example. I had a client in San Francisco. Basically, their objective, the CIO's objective, was to stand up an EA practice. So I came in, did the initial sort of assessment. We implemented LeanIX, and we needed to hire some full-time EAs, right? You can't just run an EA program with just a consultant, at least with a company this size. And we brought in some candidates, and it's a business-facing role. And we put them in front of I think it was a manager of marketing, FP&A manager, and the woman, I remember specifically in marketing, said, What is an EA, right? Like, what is an enterprise? Do you design enterprises? What is an EA? And the architect, kind of like to my dismay, grabbed the nearest dry erase marker, started whiteboarding, like what an EA does, right? 20 minutes later, kind of glazed over eyes, like that oxygen deprivated look on her face. I was just like, it's probably not working out too well, right? And so I started to think, okay, that was painful and very, very embarrassing, but what can we do to fix that, right? And I on my drive home, subway ride home, I started thinking, what if we ran EA like a business, right? Like, what if we were to have very crisp vision around who our customers are, right? Instead of trying to make everybody happy, that's a dead end, right? We're going to say, okay, the CIO is our bread and butter customer, maybe the chief operating officer, data protection officer for GDPR, right, et cetera. We have a finite list of who our customers are. We tell everyone else, maybe we'll be light touch, maybe we'll provide some light touch consultation, but these are our core customers. And the second thing you would do in a business is, what products and services do we provide, right? So as EAs, we may provide a holistic view of cross-functional processes. We have our list of products and services. And then the third thing is making sure customers are satisfied. Someone mentioned KPIs earlier. You have to have your success measures. And finally, you have to be measuring those KPIs as well. But I think EA needs an elevator pitch, right? Mm-hmm. So if you run into someone in the hallway and someone says, what do you do, at this company? Like, what value do you add? You can say, we architect cross-functional solutions, or whatever your soundbite is. We design all IT strategic initiatives, right, or top-line growth initiatives. Some pitch, not a mission statement, not a charter or anything. Any of those kind of old school paradigms, I think, are dead. Frankly, It just people, it goes in one ear and out the other. So I think about EA as a business is not necessarily too far off base, because in business you have competition, and when you're poor at delivery, people go around you. So I think if your EA program is not successful, people will go around you, right? So it's not really like a philosophical paradigm; it's a very real thing, right?
Mm-hmm. And with the rise of cloud, there's a lot of discussion about IT being taken on kind of a brokerage role. There may be services, applications in the data center, in the corporate data center, that fit the business need, but there's probably plenty of stuff out there on the cloud, provided by cloud services, that also fit that need. That almost sounds like what you're discussing here with the EA, to assume a type of brokerage role, or someone, someone in the company that can help discover and surface the needed services and capabilities.
I think coming back to defining your customer, defining your services, it's not necessarily black or white. Like, one of the models we've put together is almost like a pyramid kind of model, in which it's almost like an upside down funnel, right? Where if we say at the top of the funnel, where it's broad, we're going to provide a kind of wide swath of services to projects that fit our criteria, or projects that are in our wheelhouse, right? And then kind of at the apex of the funnel, the very bottom of the funnel, we have kind of some light touch services. So how I would pitch all this to an actual business person is, look, we in IT are, insert tagline here. We are the firm that, or we're the internal consultancy that does cross-functional projects and IT initiatives. It's okay. Well, is my CRM solution a cross-functional? And that's what they want to know. We say yes. Right, here are the services we're going to provide to you. Or, finance wants to implement an FP&A solution. That's a very departmental solution. We may say, we have a very hands-off kind of cut sheet of things that any enterprise solution has to abide by, like single sign-on, has to have an API, blah, blah, blah. Go forth and conquer, and just let us know. Put it in LeanIX later, so we know about it. And that's that. That's the end of the story. And that's kind of how you divide and conquer, and provide some coverage where it might be more focused, and more coverage where it's broad, where EAs are supposed to play technically.
Can you provide us you provided us with that story about the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Can you provide us some examples of where EA is really taking hold
Yeah,
and is working
sure.
well?
Quite a few of those, but I think in more recent memory, we're at a company where sales and marketing were at very different maturity levels, right? Marketing had a huge lead generation initiative. They were going to generate something like 500,000 leads in a certain amount of time. They were off evaluating AI solutions to do account-based marketing, right? They were really, really advanced. And then we kind of walk next door to sales and we said, hey, what if marketing is successful? Are you going to be able to handle all these leads? And they're like, we're talking about, like, they were kind of, way, way behind. But they too were looking at software. They were trying to get kind of up to speed with like lead scoring and things like that. So EA came in and said, okay, in this scenario, we need to develop a cross-functional lead gen process, right? That's the peas and the mashed potatoes. And the mashed potatoes, we're going to get you this, we're going to actually be the technical consultants on the implementation of this AI solution you want. So we're kind of giving them what they want, but again, baking in behind the scenes the rails to prevent them from going sideways or just being misaligned as two sort of adjacent departments. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And I thought the example from Pinellas County was a terrific example of being able to provide value to the organization, keeping things on track and discovering things that the company or IT was not aware of that existed. Applications, for example, near the end of life. And have you seen a lot of that in your work as well?
We do see a lot of that. The thing that's kind of almost like alarming is like when the organization itself changes, right? So we'll come into an org and they'll want to apply DevOps to sales, finance, product. So for example, they'll want to say, we want to experiment on our product, or we want to create dynamic SKUs on the fly, and we don't want to have walls between finance and sales and product engineering. We just want to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no time there's no time for EA to kind of take 3 months to figure out how to do this, right? So those are the times where that's like super disruptive, and we have to figure out ways to really implement frameworks so that the business can be autonomous without having to go through EA, right? So something like automating EA itself, right? So that's kind of like where our head's at right now is, okay, we've established like the application portfolio. We're feeding the app portfolio dynamically and things like that, but how can EA almost be like a force multiplier without being present, right? And that's sort of the big, big challenge right now.
Okay, and David, do you have any additional thoughts or pointers you want to provide to the group on how to implement EA? And
yeah, I mean, echoing some of the sentiments from earlier, I think be iterative in your approach, mm-hmm. right? Don't try to boil the ocean. Really focus on delivering some value before you ask for more resources, right? So what can you do with one EA or half of an EA? Show some value and then talk about building a team. And then basically be very, very adaptable, right? Be adaptable, and it shouldn't be a bad thing to change your elevator pitch from year to year. Don't stick to the age-old, realign, technology with the business vision. We've all heard that, right? Make your elevator pitch very company-specific, very value-focused, and let it evolve over time.